Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on yet another episode of Reporters Direct. I like to first thank all the readers, viewers, and subscribers of the print for joining this live show. It's because of you subscribers, good readers, viewers, that we have been able to go out on the ground and do the good work, bring you the ground stories, the stories that matter to you. Thanks once again to all the subscribers. I'm sorry the Reporters Direct show started a bit late because there were some technical glitches, but now we are here, and I will request you all to send your questions, to mail your questions. I'll be happy to answer all of them in the 40-45 minutes that I'll be here. Let me first tell you a bit about myself. My name is Maushami Dasgupta. I'm a reporter at The Print, and I report on government policies, governance, politics, and the infrastructure sector for the website. This episode is basically this episode is a new video series that The Print has started. It's called Reporters Direct, as you know, and it essentially gives our subscribers the opportunity to interact directly with the reporters who are traveling on the field. Ask them whatever questions they want to know, ask them about how reporters function when they are in the field, how they do their reporting. You can also give us your suggestions. You can also give us tips on how we can improve or anything that you want to know about your work, and we will answer your questions in this show. Thank you again for tuning in. Do send your questions. Do keep them coming, because this is a live show and it will get interactive once more viewers, more subscribers send their questions. Thank you once again. Let me first tell you about where all have I been during the pandemic. So during the second wave of the COVID pandemic, which essentially showed a surge sometime in mid-April, so I traveled to Uttar Pradesh. I reached Uttar Pradesh on April 19th, and I had traveled to, I was in Lucknow for a couple of days. And from there, I traveled to Gorakhpur, I traveled to Devariya, I traveled to Allahabad, Amethi, Ayodhya, and the far-flung villages in Bundelkhand areas. While traveling, it was a conscious effort to not only do ground reporting from urban areas, but to travel extensively in the hinterlands as well, in the rural areas as well, and see the COVID situation unfolding there. So during my travel, what I saw was also because I traveled during the peak of the pandemic, and UP was one of the worst affected states. It was, in fact, one of the 5 worst affected states during the second wave, and during the second wave. So, I mean, it was chaos. I mean, if I talk of capital Lucknow, or even Gorakhpur, where I traveled, or Prayagraj, it was total chaos on the ground, essentially because there was a deluge of cases, and the health infrastructure in the smaller cities and districts and the rural areas was overwhelmed. Hospitals had run out of bed. There was no essential medical supplies had run out. Also, because even in districts and towns, I mean, even the authorities and the administration, many people were down with COVID. So there was a chaos on the ground, and because of that, people suffered because they went to the hospitals with patients and there were no beds. Many of them died gasping for breath. So that was that was the situation there in on the ground that I saw. There were very distressing scenes across, especially in rural areas where the health infrastructure is completely decrepit. You have primary health centers which have either they are closed or there are hardly any trained doctors there. In some of the health facilities, in the primary health facilities that I went, in smaller villages in eastern UP, the ward boys and the nurses, they were running the primary health centers. So also in rural areas, because there is a lot of hesitancy among the people to come out and get tested. So that had also compounded the problem. Even in cities, because there was a deluge in cases and people were facing difficulty getting their, getting COVID patients admitted. So in there were many instances where they were moving out to other districts, other towns, smaller towns, in the hope that they would find a place in the hospitals. Administratively, there was there was lot of gaps on the ground. There were hardly any administrative officials who could be seen helping the public at that point of time, and that had resulted in a lot of anger among the public, and which was natural also when you see somebody close to you who is suffering and you don't know where to go. You go to a hospital and there is nobody to help you around, nobody to tell you where you can go and get your relative or friend admitted. You're bound to be, you are bound to get angry, bound to get frustrated, bound to get disappointed. So that was the case. Today, as I'm talking to you, I'm back in Ayodhya again for the second time in less than a month. But when I had come to Ayodhya in May, things were in Ayodhya compared to the other districts of UP. The situation was slightly better because the authorities here had taken prompt decision to not to close all the temples and not to let tourists and devotees enter the pilgrim city, and they enforced it very strictly. So it helped in keeping the numbers down, both the number of COVID cases and deaths down. So that was back then, but even then, on an average, there were about 200 cases a day. So I'm back here after a month to report on the developments around the Ram temple that's coming up. There have been allegations of irregularities in the land deal where the temple has come up. So I am here to find more about that and bring you detailed stories on that. But what I see here after a month is a vast change from what was there about a month back. The numbers, COVID numbers are down. There are no deaths. The COVID numbers are down, and the authorities have also lifted most of the curbs that were imposed in the city back then. The lockdown has been lifted. Only on weekends you have lockdown. Businesses have resumed, shops have opened, but what is the matter of concern is that people are out on the roads and hardly anybody is adhering to the COVID protocols. I hardly saw people masking themselves or maintaining social distance. So people have basically thrown all caution to the wind, and which is very dangerous at this point of time, because the virus has not gone. It's very much shared, and it's our adherence to all these norms, all the self-discipline that's going to help us fight the virus. I'll now open the floor to questions. I'll be taking in your questions. There have many questions have already come in. So I'll try to answer most of them. We have around 40 minutes here. So I'll try to answer the questions that have come in. Do keep sending in your questions, and I'll answer them as and when they come in. So the first question is from Dr. Nayan Ahmed, who has asked that, will vaccination help to reduce the spread of COVID as the new mutant variants are emerging? We are all confused and wary of the emerging threat. Well, will vaccination help to reduce the spread of COVID as the new mutant variants are emerging? Right now, see, it's more of an academic question, because whether the vaccination would be effective against mutant variants or not, that more trials, more research would have to be done. But what is known for sure is that, I mean, if you vaccinate for first the new mutant virus, so the delta plus virus, that the mutant form that that has been detected. So right now in India, of the total 3 crore cases, there are just 40 cases of delta plus. So the numbers are very few. The point is that variants, this delta plus variant as a percentage of total number of cases is very small. But the efficacy of the and the efficacy of the vaccine might be less. But what we know for sure is that the vaccine is effective against the original virus, against all the other different variants, and it will help us against getting against serious illnesses. So that is the most important part. Please go and get yourself vaccinated if you have not done so far, and because that is our only protective gear against this virus. And it has been established that vaccination helps not only in reducing the severity of the case, but it also helps in bringing down the chances of hospitalization in people who have got themselves vaccinated. But more importantly, what we have to remember and what we have to adhere is that is this COVID protocols. There is that still works. So you will have to keep yourself mask yourself whenever you go out, maintain social distancing when you are in a public place, keep washing your hands frequently, sanitize your hands. So these are the most effective way to fight the virus and virus. The second question is from Mr. Praveen Pashricha. He's a subscriber from New Delhi only, and he has asked about, are efforts made by the UP government showing result, or they are just an eyewash? Well, see, Mr. Pashricha, the thing is that when the virus was at its peak in mid-April and May, the UP government could not handle it appropriately. And one of the main reasons for that was a deluge in cases, and the state government was not prepared. When I was in Lucknow, in April, I had interviewed the UP Health Minister, Mr. Jay Pratap Singh, and he told me on record that the state never anticipated that there would be so many cases. And when the second wave hit UP, the state was completely taken unawares. That's why the medical infrastructure in the hospitals were not up to the mark. They got completely overwhelmed. In many places, they just crumbled. So, I mean, at that point of time, the UP government could not do much. But as the numbers came down, and also as the state government got a grasp over the situation, they have tried to increase the number of beds. They are also now readying the health infrastructure in anticipation of another wave, if it happens. Also, they are bolstering the medical oxygen supply to the different districts, both in rural and urban areas. So they are working towards bolstering that. So that's not an eyewash. But yeah, at the same time, I mean, during the peak of the pandemic, the state was found wanting in addressing the situation. There is another question that I have from Aditya Sharma. He's a student, and he has asked, so it's a hardcore journalist question. So he wants to know about what is the role of a senior associate editor in an organization? He has asked multiple questions, and he says that since you have been traveling in UP, what undercurrent you see for the UP assembly elections? Then he's also asking about how do you filter out relevant information for a story from an ocean of irrelevant information. I'll take one question at a time. So what is the role of a senior associate editor in an organization? Well, a senior associate editor, apart from doing reporting, going out in the field and doing stories, getting stories, the person is also expected to take more responsibilities like mentoring your junior colleagues, mentoring your subordinates, ideating with your colleagues, helping the junior colleagues understand what story is, how to look for stories, how to gather information, how to make contacts, and also help them learn about the different aspects of gathering news, and also help them write the stories, because the stories have to be structured. When you go out and get information, there is a deluge of information. So you need to know how to filter out the relevant information from the irrelevant information and write it in a structured way to make it readable. So that is also the role that senior associate editors do. So how do you filter out relevant information for a story from an ocean of irrelevant information? Well, and is there any concepts that I apply? There is no better concept than the 5 W's and 1 H. So the 5 W's are who, what, why, when, where, and how. So when you go out looking for a story, I always follow this 5 W and 1 H principle of journalism and get the information accordingly. Yeah, it's true that when you go out, like when I went out during the pandemic, meeting people, there are different stakeholders you talk to. You talk to the people who are there, you talk to the hospital authorities, you talk to the district administration, you talk to different stakeholders, and you get a whole lot of information, and they are going in all, I mean, they are not structured, so you get all kind of information, you jot down the information. So the trick is that when you sit to write a story, you go through your notes, and then you again go back to the 5 W's and 1 H and write your story accordingly. You have to first think, what is the story that you want to tell your viewers, tell your readers, and what is the most important aspect of the story that you are writing, and you start telling the story, to start writing the story accordingly, and structure it as per the 5 W and 1 H concept. So that's the trick, that's a concept I have followed till date, and that has held me in good stead. So there is this question from Aryan Prakash. He is a student from Mumbai, and he is asking, how did you go about the process of checking death counts? And also, did you feel frightened that FIRs may be registered against you for sedition by the UP police, as they have done against other journalists? So I'll take the first question. How did you go about the process of checking death counts? When I went to the different districts and towns, so the best way of checking the death count is every district administration in the evening, they release a health bulletin of the official figures, the official number of cases, official number of deaths. So you take that figure, and then I'll give you my example. Like when I went to Gorakhpur, which also happens to be UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath's home constituency. So I visited the crematoriums. So in the crematorium, the municipal staff in the crematoriums, they keep a record of the total number of bodies, both COVID and non-COVID dead bodies, which have come to the crematorium. So they maintain a record. So I used to go to the visit the crematoriums and get those numbers from the municipal staff posted at the crematoriums. So you tally the figures that the municipal staff is recording at the crematorium with the health bulletin figure, and you know the gaps. You could see that the number of figures that were reported in the crematoriums are far more. The number of bodies that were coming for cremation were far more than the number of deaths, the death figures released by the district administration in their health bulletin. And that was not the case only in Gorakhpur. That was the case almost everywhere I went. In Kanpur, for instance, where I went, there was a huge discrepancy in the official death figures given by the administration in the evening and the actual number of deaths that were being reported, that were recorded in the record books by the municipal staff in the crematoriums. Aryan's second question is that, did you feel frightened that FIRs may be registered? Well, no, I didn't feel frightened because I was doing my job. I was going out and reporting what I saw. What I saw on the ground. I spoke to the people and I wrote about what they were telling me. So no, I was not feeling, I didn't feel afraid that that FIR might be lodged against me. Some more questions have come. I'll just take in. So Deepshikha Mishra has asked, what approaches can journalists take to curb misinformation during a time of pandemic, and how has the print followed these approaches? That's a very good question, Deepshikha. Journalists play a very big role in ensuring that you don't go around spreading misinformation. And how did we do that? By checking and rechecking our facts on everything, every story that we were doing. And and there are multiple times, the multiple checks that you do. So when you go out on the field, when I went out on the field and spoke to people, and they told me some figures that there has been a huge number of dead bodies that have come in. So you don't just stop at that and start writing about that. So you go back to the district administration, you go back to the health officials, health authorities, and ask them that, is it true that there have been a deluge in cases in the last 2 days, last 3 days? And then they will come up with answers. So that's how you go about cross-checking your facts. Never just depend on what one person has said or one group of persons have said. And always cross-check your facts or whatever you have heard on the ground with the authorities, because that is important. Because at that point of time, people get very emotional, people are angry, they will tell you all kind of things. So and not all of them are wrong, but the thing is that you can't just go, just listen to whatever the people on the ground are saying and come and report that. You will have to go and cross-check it, counter-check it with the authorities, whether it's true. If it's true, what's the reason? If it's not true, what is the actual situation? So that's the process that I followed, and that's the process most of my colleagues who were traveling during the pandemic followed, to bring you information that was accurate and which was based on facts. Aditya Gautam has asked this question from Melbourne. So Aditya is asking, how do you deal with the hesitancy of a subject you are interviewing who is wary of talking, fearing backlash from authorities? This will be a factor that will be especially pertinent these days in places like UP. Is a very important question and a very good question. Yes, it's a big challenge for journalists, especially in times like this, during pandemic, when you go out to report on the field. So there are a lot of times, like there were a lot of times when, I came across subjects who are not willing to talk, especially the health force staff. So during a pandemic, because there is so many cases, there is so much confusion in a health setup. So the health officials inside hospitals, also the health staff, they're very reluctant to talk, and they are also afraid that if they talk openly to the media, and if they tell you about what's the actual situation inside the hospital, then they might be pulled up by the senior authorities in the hospitals, in the state government. So and that's a very, very, very real thing, as in across hospitals, across districts. That's one thing that most of us reporters came across. So how do you deal with it? Well, there is no one way of dealing with it. When I came across subjects, some of them, you try talking to them, you tell them that why are you there, what are you doing, and how will it help? Like, if I don't tell the story that is unfolding here, how is anybody going to know about it? And if some action can be taken, if nobody knows, how is anybody going to take any action? So it's important to tell the story. Then there are times then the subject tells you that they will talk, they open up, but they will talk on the condition that you can't quote them. So you have to respect that. You tell them, okay, it's going to be off record. You are not going to breach that trust. You are not going to reveal their identity. So then they start talking. But again, there are cases where they completely clam up and say that they are not going to talk. And I guess, you just deal with it. You respect their, right to not talk, and then, go and find somebody else who is willing to talk. You can't force a subject to talk. And one important thing is, a subject who is talking, a health official or a government official who is talking to you on conditions of anonymity, you don't breach that trust ever. If he's saying he doesn't want to be quoted, respect that. We respect that, and we don't quote him. So that's how we deal with it. And yes, of course, in UP, that was one problem that we face across cities, across towns and villages. Well-meaning officials, they just clam up. They just said that, we don't want to talk to the media because, there can be, some action can be taken against us. We have another question from Narendra Kashyap from New Delhi. So Narendra is asking, how popular is CM Yogi Adityanath in UP currently, given that BJP has done badly at the Panchayat elections? Well, it's a very political question, and also for which I don't have any answer, because there has been no survey as such to tell you about Yogi Adityanath's popularity ratings in the state as of now, like we have in some of the states, or also in before elections. A lot of these agencies do surveys to find out the ratings of the politician of the day. So we didn't have any such survey in UP, so it's very difficult to tell how popular CM Yogi is right now. One will have to wait till next year for the assembly elections, which is scheduled early next year, to find out that. But yes, the state government, the BJP, did fare badly in the Panchayat elections. And there were multiple reasons for it. The pandemic was one of the reasons, because the Panchayat elections were held bang in the middle of the second wave of the pandemic. So, somewhere down the line, people's anger came out showed in the election result. So that was one of the reasons. Also, the BJP had not prepared that well also during the Panchayat elections. So there were multiple reasons for why the party didn't fare well. And now, of course, the central leadership has held a number of meetings with the state government, state officials, state party leaders, and they are planning their strategy for the next year's election. We have another question from Ashok Kanwar from Pune. So Dr. Kanwar wants to know, what motivates you as a journalist? Well, just going out, meeting people, meeting new people, getting to the root of a story and trying to find out what is the real story behind the story. That's what keeps me motivated as a journalist. And the chance to go out, the chance to visit different places where news is unfolding and reporting from there on a real-time basis, that's what motivates me. Our subscriber Kareem Aziz has sent this question from USA. Thank you, Mr. Aziz, for sending this question and for interacting with us on Reporters Direct. Keep reading, keep viewing the print. So Mr. Aziz has asked, in US, we do have a sizable population that does not trust in vaccine. Is there vaccine hesitancy in India as well? What is the general sense you get when you talk to the people? Well, vaccine hesitancy in India is very real and is a matter of concern. It's not only in urban areas where people are educated, people are aware that they're shying away from getting themselves vaccinated. In rural areas, the problem is far, far worse. And there are many reasons for that. So for instance, when I was traveling in rural areas, I found the vaccine hesitancy more acute in rural areas, mainly because of lack of information, lack of communication from the government. In rural areas, for instance, in Bundelkhand, when I was traveling there, I visited Banda and Chitrakoot. So I came across people in the villages who said that, they don't want to get vaccinated because, somebody would put in an injection and then they would become unconscious and their kidneys would be taken out of their bodies. And then many people were of the view that, you get vaccinated and you will die, you will get fever and you will die. So because many people, they said, that have died after they got vaccinated. So in rural areas, the hesitancy is far more, and the government needs to aggressively communicate to the people why vaccination is important, and also to dispel all this misinformation that, nobody's kidney is going to be taken out when they go for vaccination, and nobody dies because of vaccination. On the contrary, if you get yourself vaccinated, chances are that you will not catch the virus, and even if you get the virus, it won't be that severe. So that is important. In urban areas now, vaccination is picking up, but again, the numbers are not as it should be. Like, we are a country of 134 crores, and right now, roughly around 5 crore, 5% of our population have got vaccinated. So, which is a drop in the ocean. We need to ramp up our vaccination efforts very fast. Because the virus is still there, is still looming there. So we need to ramp up our vaccination pretty fast. By the end of this year, the effort should be to vaccinate a sizable number of our population. I'll take up, time is running out, so I'll take one or two more questions that we have. So Mr. Sridhar Ranganathan, one of our subscribers for Chennai, has asked this question. He says that, as a rule, most of us are not disciplined as a nation. How do we instill a culture of self-discipline? What did you see in small towns and villages where the people were more disciplined there? Well, Mr. Ranganathan, no. In villages, the situation was far worse than in urban areas. There is no self-discipline, and there is no enforcement also of the COVID protocols. So in villages after villages, wherever I went in the rural areas, there was mass disregard to all kind of COVID protocols. People were out in the open without masks. They hardly maintained any social distancing in public places like markets. So that was a problem. And basically, what I found was that, first, there is no self-discipline. And a government can't teach you self-discipline. There has to be some civic sense on the part of the people also. Government can do as much, but then government can't force you to wear masks. There is enforcement. The government is finding people who come out on the roads without wearing masks and they don't maintain social distance. But then on the part of the citizen also is very important to adhere to these COVID protocols and have the civic sense that, whenever you go out, you have to wear masks, you have to maintain social distancing, and that's how you will keep the virus at check. I'll take one last question from one of our subscribers, Siddharth. So Siddharth from Delhi. So Siddharth has asked, were you afraid when you went out, when the office sent you to cover the pandemic during the second wave. Well, no, Siddharth, I was not afraid to go out on an assignment. Yes, I was afraid of the virus. And I think that it's good that I was afraid, because I was afraid, I was able to, I was always on my guard when I was going out in the field. I was double masking. I wear 2 masks. I had put I had sanitizer, so I was sanitizing my hands frequently. So when I was going inside the COVID ward, I did wear a PPE kit. So, and this was also because I was all the time, the back of the mind, I was afraid that maybe somewhere, I might catch the virus somewhere, because I was going to all these places which are high risk zone, hospitals, crematoriums. So yes, I was afraid, and I think it helped, because that helped me. Always be on my guard. I was always cautious, even when I was, I did not eat anything outside. I made it a point that only after covering my assignments, I used to come back to the hotel, and after, after sanitizing, after cleaning my hands, only then I used to drink water and I used to eat. So these were at times it was difficult, but because I was adhering to these protocols very, very stringently, I managed to save myself from COVID, even when covering it during the height of the pandemic in April and May. That's all for now, viewers and subscribers. Thank you so much for joining us on Reporters Direct. It was nice interacting with you. Again, it's because of you subscribers, you good subscribers, that we have been able to do the good work. We have been able to go out in the hinterlands, go out in the field, and bring you the ground stories, bring you the good stories from the ground, bring you the actual stories that are unfolding on the ground. Keep reading, keep viewing the print, and keep giving us your suggestion on how can we do better, how can we improve ourselves. Thank you so much for joining us on Reporters Direct.